Councillor Zappone.
Thanks, Liz Gerlich. I'd agree with my colleague, Senator O'Brien. I feel it is a very sad day, sad evening, and really, particularly in light of that vote earlier, that didn't make sense to me. Why we wouldn't be given more time to recommit, for lots of different reasons. There were, as Senator Quinn said, there were many, many, many articles of the Constitution that we weren't able to debate and to discuss, and so as it stands, then the people will have to go to the to vote in the referendum without really having had the opportunity to hear those deliberations, unfortunately. So, just to address Amendment 28, because all of mine were overruled. All of ours, Senator O'Brien's, mine were overruled. I'd like to begin just with a quote from an esteemed member. What added value does the Seanad give? We should be prepared to face the awful prospect of asking what it would be like if there was no Seanad. Would matters be any worse? I happen to believe that they would, but it is a case to be made. The case is that we are a revising chamber, that we can have more thematic and reasoned debates than the other house, that the atmosphere is not as adversarial, and that business can be done. However, I often wonder if that is enough for the general public. We must show that we are in some way different from the other house and not just a pale replica thereof. Those are words from our now Minister Hayes at the time of around the time of the publication of the O'Rourke report, and we are aware of that you changed your views. We have heard some of the reasons for that, Minister, but I think your question, what added value does the Seanad give, is a good one. What difference? So I want to just say a couple of things about that. What added value or what difference has this Seanad made? I've only been here, that we've all made together, and I just have a couple of things to say in relation to that. But according to three categories, has it been an effective check and balance? Has it been a substantive forum for democratic deliberation that improves our policies and legislative choices? And has it been a house generating new ideas for law? Just those three, we ask even those three questions. First of all, has it been an effective check and balance? Many of my colleagues, and you yourself, Minister, have referred to the fact that just in the last couple of years, 529 amendments by this Seanad in light of bills that have gone through, and all of those things, all of those amendments came in the context of the deliberations here. Now, I did notice, Minister, I think it was when you spoke to us in the first time we gathered in relation to this debate, that you indicated, but that yes, many of those amendments were government amendments, okay? And so, I went back and I took a look because I do have a list of the bills that were amended and the number of amendments that make up that 529 or whatever the figure it is in terms of that we have done here by checking and balancing the work of the Oireachtas. And what I noticed was, and this is just one senator, and the rest of us could do this as well. When I looked at that list and I saw, for example, the local property tax. And I'm aware that actually one of the amendments to the local property tax was actually a government amendment, but it was recommended by Senator Van Turnhout, the exemption for children and youth organizations in terms of local property tax, that the government accepted, so it became a government amendment. Or the personal insolvency legislation. Lots of amendments made here in relation to that legislation, many of which were government amendments. But I have a couple of emails from organizations that I worked with, and actually how you were gracious enough, Minister, to meet with me in relation to the personal insolvency legislation. And they've noted to me, I suppose that in my work with them, that it was perhaps the first time we were able to raise the issue that the state would provide decent minimum income guidelines for insolvent people. That became part of the personal insolvency legislation. But they weren't my amendments, but it was because of my work with organizations, and we had those robust exchanges, and you were gracious enough to meet and to listen and to hear in your office one afternoon, which I was very grateful for. So that's another example. The education and training bill, again, an area of my interest. it wasn't my amendment, but a critical amendment that the government put forward, had to do with putting a learner on those boards. And again, it was because my experience and others' experiences here who encouraged the government to do that. So yes, it might be the case that a number of the amendments were government amendments, but it was because of the exchange here for people who had that expertise. And you know, when I looked at that list again, what wasn't listed actually in those 529 amendments and the bills, the 14 bills, were other acts, 3 finance acts actually, that I know were influenced by exchanges that I had. And you know that too, Minister. Because again, the Minister for Finance was gracious enough to hear me when I raised the issue of the fact that there wasn't equivalent enough treatment between spouses and civil partners in relation to our tax. So 3 finance acts were shifted because of that, but they weren't my amendments, they were government amendments. Or a civil law miscellaneous bill, again, which in terms of exchanges that I brought forward, and it's not about me. These are just a couple of things I thought of bills, acts that weren't even listed in that list of the 559 amendments. A civil law miscellaneous bill, again, which because of the exchange, the government put forward amendments in relation to ensuring equivalence of treatment between civil partners and spouses, in terms of looking for citizenship. The health and animal welfare bill, lots of government amendments, but I know some of the colleagues here because of exchanges in relation to that. So those are just a couple of examples from one senator on the question of, were we an effective check and balance even as it stands? And I think we could answer yes. Second question, a substantive forum for democratic deliberation. Again, I'm just going to take a couple of examples in terms of my experience, but I know our colleagues and have identified that. Just a couple quick ones are my independent group. Together we put forward 2 motions on the issue of the future of prostitution legislation. And as a result of that, finally, that issue was brought to the Justice Committee, and a huge public consultation took place, and now a report is back with radical recommendations for change of legislation that's being laid before both houses. Yes, an effective forum for deliberation. Or another one of the motions that actually Senator Marianne O'Brien led in terms of charities and the need for a charity regulator. Minister Shatter just announced last week, wasn't it last week, that we now are going to establish a charity regulator. I know that that was a result of the work of Senator O'Brien and others, and a motion that took place here. So is it a forum for democratic deliberation that improves our policy and legislative choices? Yes. And those are just a couple of examples from my experience. Thirdly, is it a house generating new ideas for law? Well, congratulations to my colleague, Senator Quinn. The contracts bill, hasn't that just been gone through finally over there? So fantastic, a house for generating new ideas, and other bills. I again, just in the civil registration amendment bill allows humanists to officiate at marriage. Senator Bocek, the wind energy bill. Senator Kelly it got passed through committee stage, but it went to committee stage, sitting there. I just published a couple of weeks ago with a couple of my colleagues legal recognition of gender bill. I don't know. And today the government unexpectedly published their heads of bill in gender recognition. I wonder, did that have any impact? Senator Averill Power, Section 37 of the Equal Status Amendment Act. We had 2 ministers come in to debate that. And it was agreed that that issue would go to the new Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission if it gets established relatively soon. Does the new ideas, generating new ideas, even these last couple of years? Yes, those are just, again, a couple of examples. And that's before we've reformed the House. That's before we've reformed the House. And then, yes, of course, Senator Crown and Senator Quinn and I, 2 bills, big bills, lots of recommendations for reform that makes this House distinctive, enables it from the Dáil, enables it to have perhaps even more expertise than it does now, and greater diversity. Lots of discussion, lots of debate, lots of reflection. 2 big bills on Seanad reform that are here and that are sitting and that are waiting. and contrast that with the ideas in relation to doll reform. And this is where I have to say I'm quite surprised, and maybe it's my political naivete. I'm not sure, I've only been a politician for a couple of years, and I'm not sure. I think that's part of my identity.
Longer than that, longer than that,
Okay, well, I have to say I'm shocked by, I know you had this big agenda for reform, but the ideas for what were put forward as perhaps more substantive doll reform to ensure a check and balance when the Seanad goes, the first set of ideas came out in a press release with the abolition bill. A press release, yes it was. I saw that press release. That's what, and then the second time I saw more ideas being developed was Richard Bruton's, something on Richard Bruton's website in relation to developing the ideas. And then when you came in here and Minister, in relation to the abolition bill, expanding a bit of those ideas in relation to reform. I've already spoken about what I think about some of those ideas. Others have. I don't think they're substantive enough. By any means, to provide a check and a balance to ensure the generation of good ideas and a different type of democratic deliberation. And the costs. And as for the costs, now I got in my pigeonhole this week, and again this is in black and white, from the Houses of the Oireachtas Commission, estimates of the amount of monies required in respect of ongoing expenditure for the period beginning January 2014 to December 2014, and it has also the costs for 2013, and it is under 10 million that it says Seanad Éireann in black and white. It is there, and we had this deliberation when you were here the last time, Minister, about where does the 20 million come from, and why is it still being put out? And here is the 10 million. It is there, as I said, in black and white. So therefore, it has been effective. We've put forward ideas for reform. Again, as other of my colleagues have said, every single amendment to try to include the possibility for reform to be put before the people, no, ruled out of order, in conflict with the bill, no way to get it in. Your bill was not brought to a committee ahead of time, this abolition bill, even though you say you're going to do that with everything else once we're gone. You provided no rationale for that. You didn't provide any rationale. Did they give us any rationale for that? And I suppose the final question I have, really, again, that I just don't understand this from the perspective of the use of the taxpayers' money, is what was the rush of putting before the people a referendum to abolish us? Why did you have to do it now? Why couldn't you have waited a couple of more years, when in fact you would have had time to put in some doll reforms that we don't have now? But also, and as Senator O'Brien has indicated, if in fact, and I don't believe they will, but suppose the people do vote to abolish because they didn't have the possibility of reform in front of them, and here we have 2 more years. Here we have 2 more years. In terms of the kind of deliberations, and isn't that ultimately a waste of the taxpayers' money? So I can't get any answer, but also an appropriate rationale for why you are doing it now.